Hello, welcome back again to this week's lecture. This is section 4 on research questions. This is part of the week 1 lecture on foundations of research methods. Today we're going to talk about research questions, and we'll follow it up with the next section on making contributions. So actually, when you think about what kind of research question that you want to ask when you do research and how you make a contributions, this is similar to building a building, right? So when builders build a building, they need to build it one brick at a time. They put one brick, put the cement, put another brick, put another brick. In the same way, how knowledge progresses in the world, whether it be in natural engineering sciences or in the social sciences or in business sciences, people build knowledge one at a time. So I do one research, and there are hundreds of thousands of other people who might do related research that I do, and we're all contributing to the same pool of knowledge, and at the end it becomes one huge building. Of course, we are segregated or separated by different disciplines. Some people focus on research on accounting or finance. Some people are doing information systems. Some people are doing, let's say, sociology, anthropology, legal research. I do research on entrepreneurship and management and strategy. So there are people who are having some overlap in terms of what they study, but overall, we contribute to a huge body of knowledge like building the bricks. But the key part is because you are not the only guy, you're not the only person doing research in this world. You need to know where you are and how you can make that contribution. So this is the key part that we're going to talk about. We'll start with this part on the research question. So in order to know what kind of research question, where does research question sits in how you do research, we need to look at the overall process of doing research, right? You need to start with identifying some areas or some topic. For example, some people say, I'm interested in TikTok, I'm interested in Instagram. But that is just a very broad thing. But then you need to ask further, like, what is it about TikTok that you are interested in? Then you need to, for example, why are some people are so famous in TikTok, or why some TikTokers gain like millions and millions of followers? So if you're studying why some TikTokers are so successful as a media entrepreneur, if that is, the kind of research question you're interested in or the kind of area you're interested in, then you go to the literature, you look at, are there some prior literature or research, typically journal articles, scholarly journal articles that have been published in relation to people who are becoming very successful in related topics. Maybe for example, there's no one has done study on why some TikTokers are becoming so successful, but there have been some study on why some YouTubers are very successful, or why some Facebookers are so successful, or why some, I don't know. So there are similar type of phenomena that you could study that could lend you some initial literature to help you with. And you also read widely, broadly, using the popular press like newspapers, articles, all kind of websites, and you even do observations, you listen to or watch TikTok or even participate in it. So that give you kind of like some level of depth and breadth in literature review. And then this process of step 1 and step 2 is actually not very linear. They're very overlapping and iterative. So building one on top of the other over the time. And after some time, after doing these two processes, you start to have to see some light, or not light, the solution to the question, but you see, hey, I found the research question. I know this is the problem that I want to tackle, that I want to address. So when you do that, what you do is actually you start with talking about something broad, area of interest. For example, TikTok is such interesting phenomena in these days, and most of the 14 or 13 to 25 years old live in TikTok, how many hours a day, and this is the significance of it culturally and economically and psychologically. Some people have this problem, some people has gained from TikTok, and then you go to specific questions to say, at the end, this is my research question. I'm trying to understand why some TikTokers as a media entrepreneurs are much more successful than others. So this could be so, but I need to write that research question very clearly and carefully. From then on, then you start with theoretical development. If there are some relevant prior research has been done on this topic, you can quickly develop a research model, right? So you can quickly come up with, oh, there are some studies before on Facebookers, on YouTubers, and some related to social media, and some people become so successful in that, or even blogger. And then you can adapt those variables or process mechanisms or whatever they have found to create your own research model in terms of relation between variable A and B and C and D. You can put them together. If there is no such research has existed in the past, then you might also consider doing some qualitative research and doing that lit review to help you construct something. So some people, we have seen this very common, that people start with qualitative research to explore the phenomenon, to understand some mechanisms, some processes, and identify some key factors. And then at the end of the qualitative, they go to the second part, which is the quantitative part, which is they will develop a research model with hypothesis. So this is the key part for step 4, the hypothesis. And then you go to the next part. You need to think of your research design. You think of, how do I operationalize that model with a hypothesis? Yeah, you need to say, what variables do I need to measure, and how do I precisely measure that? There must be some items to measure them if that's how you use it, or some mechanism to test this or to manipulate this if you are doing some experiment, right? And then you need to specifically say what question you will ask, and what is the choice format. For example, is it 1 and 0 binary choice, or is it some sort of scale of 1 to 7, totally disagree, totally agree, or I did it all the time, or I never did it all the time, from 1 to 9. So you need to operationalize that measurement of those variables very specifically. And then you need to think about how you're going to sample this, right? For example, if you're studying the TikTokers, like who should be your sampling frame? Like, how many people, who will be your sample? Are you going to do a stratified sample? Are you going to do a quota sampling? Are you going to do just a random sampling? If you're studying about children's IQ and their nutrition, how are you go about doing this survey? Are you going to go to just one school, multiple schools, randomly? How many schools should you go for? How many students should you go for? So you need to decide on this, and we will have a lecture on sampling later. Don't worry about that at this moment. You also need to think about the data collection procedures. Are you going to use paper-based, ask people to fill in your survey, or your participate in your experiment in some paper form? They need to fill in something, or you're going to use some e-survey on SurveyMonkey or Qualtrics software, or you can use Google Forms, or even you could use some iPad to get standing out near the some streets or some buildings or supermarket, asking people to respond to your survey. You could do that. So that's part of the data collection procedures. And then you need to think about the analytical approach, right? So you need to think about what statistical techniques you use to analyze the data that you have collected based on your research model and your hypothesis, right? So are you going to use regression? And what type of regression? Logistic regression, multivariate regression, bivariate regression? Are you going to do what? Analysis of variance, ANOVA or MANOVA? Are you going to do factor analysis? Are you going to do conjoint analysis? So you need to think in advance. So the difference between qualitative and quantitative research, partly I'll talk about it in a moment, is in quantitative research, you need to specify everything in advance. Your hypothesis is specified in advance. How you operationalize it, how you sample it, how you collect the data, how you're going to analyze the data, everything has to be specified clearly in advance before this research starts. And the last step is you write your conclusion, you acknowledge some limitations, again, because not every research is always limited by something. So there is no perfect research. And then you also identify maybe some future research plans. And then in terms of research topic, you can think of some areas of interest, like what are you interested in? So this can be from something that you observe in the reality, something that you read, some patterns that keep on appearing or changing that you think, hey, this is interesting, I need to study this. Read widely, read broadly across all kinds of resources, newspaper, magazine, journal articles. And you can also have interactions with other people to kind of see whether this is an interesting question, interesting area to work with. And then, so while research topic is just something broad, you need to nail it down into the research question. So research question, or what we call defining the problem, this is where you create a very clear statement about how you're going to answer the research problem that you are addressing in a very specific way, and your research question need to be interesting and worthwhile. If your research question has been answered by previous researchers like 20, 40, 50 years ago, then it's not worthwhile, right? Because a lot has been known already about that topic. For example, right now, if you're studying whether being more creative in the organizations help the organization to be performing better financially, I think this question has been done like for ages, for like 30 years. So you don't want to study exactly the same. You want to add, you want to study something different, or you want to add some new variables or some new context. Maybe if most of the study has been done on the US, in the US or Western context, and you want to add something new, you could add maybe new context. Maybe you're studying companies in Latin America, in South Africa, and things like that. It's a new context, right? Or you can add some new variables. Could be moderator or mediator. We can talk about that later, but you can add some new variables to extend what is already known about the topic. And you also need to know, what do we already know about this topic? So if you don't know what do we already know about this topic that you're going to ask in the research question, then you may ask silly question or question that, again, have been tackled by other researchers for a long time ago, and it's not that useful or worthwhile. An important part is your research question preferably to be new and unique about a particular topic. New means you can make new contributions. So if no one has asked questions about what makes a certain TikToker be a very successful in getting followers, if no one has done this, so that could be something new that you could add to the conversation, and that will help the field or even the industry. So the research question eventually help you see the relationship between some predictors or causes with some outcomes or dependent variables. So by just looking at research question, it really helps you already identify what variables you will use and how you're going to test them. So these are some examples of research questions you can see. So when you see a research question like this, what will you do? What do you need to think of? Now, just to give you a quick guide, a quick way to do this is to identify what could be your the variables that you could study, right? Let's say the predictor and the outcomes that you're trying to predict. So things look the same, but when I make them in colors and tell you which one is independent, which one is dependent variable, then it becomes clearer. For example, the first one is looking at to what extent public service motivation will lead to better public service performance. So the PSM is actually the independent variable that you're trying to use to predict public service performance as the outcome, right? You can measure this at the individual level of civil servants or the departments or various departments of civil service or public service. And you want to understand what is the impact of offering free COVID vaccination on the death rate from COVID-related diseases, right? So you can see that, free COVID vaccination is your independent variable, and the mortality rate due to COVID is your dependent variable. So once you have a research question, it really helps you to know or nail down what exactly is your research question. So I'll stop it there for the section on research questions. Hopefully that's useful for you all. So research question is very integral and important part of understanding the truth, and it's related to the theory that you are trying to understand, and related to the hypothesis that you want to test. But eventually, the process is not so linear that you start the research question and you have the theory, the hypothesis. Sometimes you have the research question first, and then you develop your theory, hypothesis. Sometimes people directly have some model that they think that is very interesting to test, and then they come up with, I think this research question sound better to explain this theory or mechanism that they're trying to study. Okay, bye.